Yeah, come on. Good girl. Welcome back to my very active YouTube channel. A little bit of a preface for why I've been gone for so long. I got the morbs. No, I've been pretty down for the past couple of months and I've not been feeling like producing content, but I am back and I found a topic that I really want to talk about and that I did a lot of research for, and I just kind of wanted to put it out there. So as you can see from the title, what we're going to be talking about today is catfish. And I don't mean catfish as in the romantic type, but more of a friendly catfish, like a platonic catfish. Catfish, if you're not familiar with it, apparently the term was first coined by the movie Catfish from Neve Schulman, but you're probably more familiar with it from his TV show, his MTV show that came afterwards. Basically what catfish means is it's the act of luring someone into a relationship of any sort, be it romantic or friendship, by means of a fictional online persona. If you're familiar with the Catfish TV show, you know that Neve and his co-hosts often use aggressive tactics to blow the cover of some of the catfish that they find, under the pretense of helping the victim of the catfish find closure. Now I say it like that because I noticed a pattern in the aggressiveness that Neve and his co-host show towards the catfish in particular. But should people who are obviously suffering through an identity crisis and low self-esteem and probably like many other debilitating issues really be spoken to or attacked like that? Like, it seems to me that Neve's approach lacks a lot of compassion and a lot of empathy, but whatever. So let's explore why people catfish romantically. If you've watched the show, you'll know that there are several reasons why people start catfishing. Usually it's to bully another person, to obtain money or gifts, to taunt them or embarrass them, or to seek revenge, maybe for being jilted or dumped, or because of sexual identity anxiety. Dr. Vanman from the University of Queensland in Australia recruited 27 people from around the world who self-identified as catfish for online interviews. The interviews focused mainly on their motivations and feelings about their catfishing behavior. Dr. Vanman found that loneliness was the biggest factor as to why people started catfishing. For around 1/3 of the people he interviewed, dissatisfaction with their own self-image was also one of the biggest reasons, so people not being happy with the way that they looked. A few, but not a high percentage of the people he interviewed reported using catfishing as a way to explore their own sexual identity or gender identity. But what was most prevalent is that 2/3 of the responses mentioned a desire to escape. It's something that we know as escapism. But that's pretty much all that we have now when it comes to romantic catfish, but I did see that Dr. Vanman and his team are doing some more research on the topic, and I'm personally super excited to see what comes out. Okay, so let's jump into the first story. This first instance happened when I was around 11 or 12, so take yourself back to the early 2000s-ish, back when the internet was fun and new to explore and completely unrestricted. Back in the day, I used to go on like little chat platforms. The one that I frequented the most was called Zwinky, but you've probably heard of Habbo or IMVU and stuff like that. So it's basically a virtual reality where you choose an avatar and your avatar can go to like different places in this virtual world and interact with other people. Zwinky, for example, is a site where you choose to be a 2D character, like a cartoon character, and you can go to the mall and you can go to the park. I met a boy on Zwinky who went by the name of John. And John said that he was a 13-year-old guy, and we hit it off straight away because we were into the same music. So I was like a huge emo kid. I was into like Fall Out Boy and My Chemical Romance and like Blink-182. So we connected over music and we talked for a long time. Like, we were really good friends and we became friends really fast. I noticed while we were talking pretty much every day on MSN that there were a couple of things that were very girly about him. Obviously, I say that because the guys that I was friends with from school would not talk about these things. So he was really into Hannah Montana and High School Musical, and these were like things that the guys from my school weren't into. And another big confession to make. I was a huge Hilary Duff fan when I was a kid, and every time like I would find a new Hilary Duff song, I would send it to him and he would just be vibing to it. He was like, oh yeah, this is really neat. And I remember showing like these Hilary Duff songs to like my male friends and they're like, oh, it's girly shit, I fucking hate it. Let's go play football. Obviously, as I said, I grew up in a very open family, and if I had questions, I could ask. So sexual identities and sexual preferences were explained to me very early on, so I knew about gay people and lesbian people and the like. So I just kind of thought, oh, maybe he's just a bit effeminate, maybe he's gay, I don't know. So that was just always in the back of my head, but it didn't really matter to me because I had fun talking about these topics with him. Honestly, our friendship really grew a lot. I remember I was going into big school, so I was in primary school up until the age of 11, and at the age of 12 here in Spain you go into high school. So the summer before going into big school, especially like the week before, I was really scared of going and super insecure, and I remember that we bonded a lot about that, and he would share his experiences with changing schools. And the first couple of weeks that I went to my big school, to high school should I say, he was there for me. Like I would come home from school and message him and tell him all about it, and he would be super cool and help me get over it and, you know, talk me through it. And I really appreciated the friendship that we had there, and it grew so big in my heart, this love that I had for my friend, because I knew that I could rely on him. So flash forward to about maybe October or November, something happens that really like grabbed my attention. Like he said something that was so inherently feminine, and I just thought to ask. For some reason I was just like, oh, maybe I should just ask. So I said, I was like, are you a girl? I didn't get a response for like half an hour. I remember my mom called me to dinner, and when I came back like an hour later, I had like all of these paragraphs. I wish I could log on to MSN and find these conversations. He said, I'm sorry that like it has to be this way, and I'm sorry that I lied to you, like this huge preamble about him being super sorry. And then he said, yeah, I am a girl, and nothing else. And I was like, okay, what do you mean you're a girl? You've been telling me that you're a guy all this time. Why would you lie? And then he said, you know, my name's actually Anna, changed for obvious purposes. Her real name wasn't Anna, but she said, yeah, my name's Anna. I am a 13-year-old girl, not a boy. I don't know, it shook me so hard that this person that I had built this trust and this relationship with was suddenly a completely different person. And obviously as a 12-year-old, I couldn't quite internalize it, I couldn't quite get behind it. So I just got angry that my best friend had lied to me, and I just never spoke to her again. When I was 14, my mom put me into a private school. I immediately made friends with the outcasts, so to say, like the weirdos. I'm sorry if you ever watch this. Yes, we were all fucking weirdos, and you know it. I especially gravitated toward this girl called Holly, name changed obviously. Holly was a huge nerd, just like me. We were both really into Harry Potter. But Holly and I kind of like clicked immediately. Obviously I clicked with everyone in the group, but especially Holly. And we became really fast friends. But unfortunately for me, I had joined that school in January, like halfway through the school year. And at the end of the year, she was due to move back home to the UK with her family, which was super sad because I thought that I'd won a best friend for life, you know? But either way, we tried to make the best out of it. She would be coming like back and forth for like the rest of the year, back to Spain to visit and stuff. But around the time that she came back, she started telling us, like her friend group, about this boy that she had met who had a Twilight themed name. Twilight was big at the time, and Holly was very into Twilight. I did not share her passion, but whatever. So she basically said, yeah, I met this guy, Twilight Boy. I will call him Twilight Boy. And he's super cool and he's really nice and he's my only friend. My girlfriends and I were super happy for her that she had finally found a friend, because we knew that she had been struggling to find friends at the school that she was at. We had no reason not to believe her, obviously. So she goes back to the UK and we all get a friend request from Twilight Boy. Now Twilight Boy was very, very obviously a catfish profile. So it was a picture of a random emo boy that I'm pretty sure if you typed in emo boy into the Tumblr search bar back then, he would probably have popped up. So she found this emo's profile and stole all his pictures and made this account under this Twilight boy's name. It was weird. I immediately recognized it as a catfish. Most of the girls in my friend group did as well, except for one. So at first I was like, okay, well that kind of sucks. But I went along with it anyway, until I started receiving emails. I have these emails on my laptop. One sec. Okay, I'm back. Also, if you were here for my boobs, I'm sorry. I got cold. I had to put on my hoodie. But basically, these emails said things like, at first they were very normal, like it was the Twilight boy introducing himself to us. But then I kind of started noticing a pattern. He would say stuff like, oh, well, Holly's not doing too well, and she feels really alone, and she feels like she doesn't have friends, and she feels really inferior to the people around her. And basically what she was doing was fishing for compliments. So I could kind of understand the nuances a little bit better. So I understood that yes, she needed a little bit of a self-esteem push. She needed her ego stroked a little bit just so that she could go out and make friends. So I gave her what she needed. I replied to the Twilight boy and I said, no, you know, we tell her all the time, Holly is a beautiful girl and she's amazing, and you know, she'll find friends. So I gave her what she wanted. I also messaged her directly and made sure that she was okay and made sure that she knew she could rely on me as a friend, and like, I never told her that I knew that it was a fake profile. Incidentally, after we flooded the Twilight boy with compliments and reassurances, he stopped being active. So I guess it worked out fine. Let's talk about Anna. I no longer have contact with Anna, though I wish that I could. I don't even know her email address, her real full name, because obviously she went by John last name, and I'm not going to be able to find that person unless that's her dad. Let's also keep in mind that I never tried to find specific reasons for her behavior. I never inquired further, so I don't 100% know the full picture. So most of the stuff that I'm going to be talking about here are different hypotheses. So let's explore the different reasons as to why she would do something like this. It is unlikely that she lied about her age. Her way of expressing herself, her interests, all of that read as the behavior of a 13-year-old girl. Most teenagers deal with identity issues at this age. It's the age at which we usually also figure out our sexuality. Identity, the term identity, refers to our sense of who we are as individuals and as members of our social group. Our identities are not simply our own creation. Our identities grow in response to internal as well as external factors. To some extent, each of us chooses an identity, but identities are also in turn formed by the environment that you live in, forces that are completely out of our control. So let's explore this in a sociological way a little bit further. We have two types of identities. We have the self-identity, which refers to how we define ourselves. Self-identity forms the basis of our self-esteem. In adolescence, the way that we see ourselves changes in response to our friends, our peers, our family, our school, and other environments like your sports club or whatever. Most importantly, our self-identities shape our perceptions of belonging. Then on the other hand, we have our social identity, which is constructed by others. Teenagers are constantly exploring their identities. You'll probably remember it from your own childhood, or you see it in your siblings, from the way that they dress, to the way that they speak, to the ideas they have about what they will do in the future. Teenagers are just constantly evolving. So this is where we come to our first theory. What if Anna just wanted to experiment as being a boy? What if she was struggling with her own gender identity? At 13 years old, she would have been ripe for discovering that in fact she was living as the wrong gender. What if she did really feel like a boy? Maybe talking to strangers in a chat room like Zwinky gave her the possibilities of exploring what it would be like to be a boy. If this is truly the reason as to why she did this, then I recognize that I had some part in shunning her away from a true gender with the way that I reacted. Another thing that I want to touch on is that maybe Anna was practicing what in sociology we call impression management. She was dipping her feet in the water to see how her odd self would be perceived. So let's go into this further. I know there's a couple of terms here. So impression management. It's a conscious or unconscious effort to strategize one's influence upon another's perception of them. Or more simply, how to present yourself to someone else. We have the actual self, the ideal self, and the odd self. The actual self is the person's own actual personality. The ideal self is, well, just an ideal version of your personality. And the odd self is who they think they should be. When we combine these three personality types together, we create an individual's online persona or identity. And this is where catfishing then comes in. Suppose someone had a different ideal self or odd self to their actual self. This is where they would probably use a picture that they think they identify with more, or that they think that they should look like, that they ought to look like. So maybe the way that she was portraying herself as a boy and using the pictures of a boy and the characteristics of a boy was her practicing her odd self. And if this was really a test to see if she would be accepted as her odd self, then I genuinely failed her. But let's come back to reality and apply Occam's razor. In the end, I don't know all of the ins and outs of her story. I never asked further, I just got angry and left. So let's just assume the most obvious solution. As kids growing up in the 90s, early 2000s, we were told not to speak to strangers on the internet, as it was a very unsafe and uncontrolled environment that wasn't completely explored yet. We didn't have the security measures that kids do nowadays, and maybe her parent or her guardian asked her not to, put herself in dangerous situations. So maybe she took that warning as maybe I shouldn't go on the internet as myself. Maybe I should go onto the internet as somebody completely different, so that way I am protected. I know that she was only 13 years old, so she couldn't have probably thought that far, but maybe she thought that if she passed herself off as a boy, she would be less desirable to potential predators. This seems like the most likely explanation to me, but I still have a myriad of questions about it. I do hope that someday I can get in touch with her again and talk about all the things that were left unsaid. Let's move on to Holly. Now, with Holly, it's a different situation because I was very, very good friends with her for such a long time, so I understood quite a lot about her personality. I got to know her a lot better than I did Anna. Before we consider Holly's actions and we explore the reasons why, we need to first consider why people lie in general. According to research, the biggest reason why people lie is to protect or to promote themselves. If your long-distance friends are constantly harassing you about finding friends or asking you how your social efforts are going, you may well become frustrated and resort to using self-serving lies to create an image that the others will like. In this way, they can protect their reputation in their in-group and keep up the status they worked hard to accomplish. Her telling us these self-serving lies put us at ease, and she kept her status within the group. Another thing that I found is that lies are usually expressions of wishes. Because Holly felt alone and estranged from the groups that she encountered, she likely did wish for a friend who was like-minded and would help her find a larger social group. She was estranged from our group because she was so far away. She was living in the UK and we were here in Spain. And she had a lot of social anxiety when it came to trying to integrate herself into other groups. What if, in order to fulfill my wish, I just want to make my fantasy that little bit more real? And what makes a teenager more real than supporting social media profiles? This would have been 2010, 2011. Facebook was a big thing. Holly and I especially were on Tumblr a lot. So a social media profile really made the person real. And I guess this is where the catfishing kind of started to becoming more popular. So now that I have this social media profile for my persona, for my new friend that I wish I had, my ideal friend is now engaging with my other friends that are concerned about me, which means that these friends can be reassured that I am taking the necessary steps to involve myself socially, and they can ease off the questions. But this is also where Holly then found an additional benefit. She could farm for reassurance and compliments. Teenagers are infamous for their low self-esteem, so it's no surprise that Holly used her newfound powers as a catfish to, of course, fish for compliments. She doesn't ask her friends for compliments directly because it's embarrassing for her, especially because she has to keep the status of this alpha dog that is above the social standards. And of course, she is a person that we admired and that we looked up to, so she didn't want to put herself further down in the hierarchy of her group, because this would make her lose face, and that's not something that somebody high up in the hierarchy wants to do in their in-group. Let's expand on that concept. In sociology, face is an image of the self, which depends on both the rules and values of a particular society and the situation the social interaction is embedded in. The compliments my friend group and I related back to the Twilight Boy boosted her ego and helped her gain some much needed confidence. And that's why it's no surprise that the Twilight Boy's social media accounts pretty much stopped being active right after we gave her all of these compliments. Now, I'm not saying that Holly initially set out to fish for compliments, but I've never talked to her about the situation, so I don't know if that was her intention all along. I think her ultimate actions of fishing helped her immensely, though. There's also a moral debate to be had here. Should people use deception in order to gain needed self-love? What is the difference between a young teenager doing this and an actual adult doing something like this? At what age do we draw the line between appropriate behavior to counteract actual psychological stress and inappropriate use of deception for personal gain? My moral outlook on deception is a little bit skewed from that of a normal neurotypical. Although I don't like to label myself as Machiavellic, I do believe that lying can and should be used in order to gain status or maybe even something material. In my books, and you may disagree, but this is me, in my books, a well-executed lie is one in which nobody gets hurt, but you still profit in some way. Holly's was a victimless crime, though at first I felt disappointed at the situation, not just because Holly had created this fake persona, but because she could not confide in me with the issues that she was facing. It made me feel like a bad friend, but it did encourage me to become a better one. Nevertheless, her actions helped her become more self-assured and confident, and it ultimately led to her finding friends that she related to and enjoyed being around. So we have to ask, were her actions really wrong? You know, she got what she needed, she got her ego boost, and we are still in contact and we are still friends, so what's it hurt? Can't have a video without some much needed Koba content. How do you feel about catfishes, Koba? Thanks for your input on this situation. I'm so glad you were here to support me. So yeah, there are many different reasons as to why people would catfish platonically, but really it goes down all the way into the core of why is this person lying. We need to find the motivation for the lie before we can explore the deeper psychological side effects to it. Be careful out there. Catfishes are very prevalent and most of them are professional, so keep your eyes peeled. Thanks for being here. If you enjoyed this and you'd like to see more, just let me know. As always, I have listed all of the sources for my research down below. Thanks for joining. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.